What's up, everybody? My name is Casey. I am an actor and a filmmaker in Austin, Texas, and this is The Movie Worthy Woman. What is The Movie Worthy Woman, you say? It is a video that I will do every other week talking about a badass lady from history whose life is worth commemorating through film, but for some reason, it has not been. The first lady we're going to talk about today is Forough Farrokhzad. Don't worry, you don't have to know who she is, because I'ma tell ya. Forough Farrokhzad was an Iranian-born poet that lived from 1934 to 1967. And in some of my research, I read that in some parts of the world, her name was often said in quick succession with Rumis. Why was she a badass? Because she didn't give a fuck about the social expectations put on women in Iran during her lifetime. She broke all of the rules and then wrote some lovely poetry about it. If you also love Forough Farrokhzad and have more information or sources or corrections, or maybe you can say her name better than I can, please definitely comment below. I would love to read about it. Okay, let me paint a picture for you. In Iran, between 1925 and 1979, it was considered a time of progress for women. Now, I'm going to read my cheat sheet below so I don't mess this up. But during this time, they finally had access to free education. In 1963, they acquired the right to vote. The Family Protection Act of 1975 gave women the right to petition for divorce, where before they could not ask for divorce, raised the minimum marrying age of girls from 13 to 16. Women were granted potential custody of their children in the event of divorce, and men had to get permission from the court and their wife if they wanted to take a second wife. Before that point, they could have up to 4 wives, no questions asked. Now, while this is very great and absolutely necessary progress, what it tells me is that women in Iran had been living in a time where they were considered property and their job was to be a wife. Even though progress was being made, Forough, as many Iranian women of the time, I'm sure, had trouble escaping old ideals. She was married at 16 and experienced 3 years of domestic life before. And honestly, I don't know what that 3 years entailed. I didn't find a lot of information about it. But I do know that whatever happened during that time catalyzed her into becoming a rebel. Step 1 in becoming an Iranian badass rebel: write poetry. Step 2, have affairs. Step 3, write poetry about those affairs. And step 4, get that shit published. Now, for the record, Foroug's poems weren't all about affairs. She definitely wrote about life and love and the human experience. She definitely wrote about what it was like to be a female in Iran in 19 something or other. But her work was definitely fueled by the struggle between domestic expectation and artistic freedom. I think it was something that really ignited her creative voice throughout her life. So, how did she start a revolution, you ask? Listen up. At the age of 19, she walked into a prestigious magazine and submitted her poem Sin for publication. This was not a common thing for women to do. What was more uncommon was that her poem was about an affair she had had with the magazine's editor-in-chief, who was also married. Add to that the fact that she published this shit under her own name. And yes, it was published. She published it under her own name, which is uncommon because at the time, poets, who were largely men, published under pen names. She did not. She stamped that with her name. So, okay, let me put this into perspective a little bit more for you. It was expected that men would have affairs, that they would have second, third, and fourth wives and lots of lovers. But women were not allowed to have affairs. Women could be punished or killed for having an affairs, with little to no punishment brought upon their murderers or punishers. What? So remember how I said women were only recently granted custody of their children in the event of divorce? Well, because of the publication of Sin, and let's be honest, probably some other stuff too, Forough got divorced and she lost custody of her son, and her ex-husband and her ex-husband's family denied her visitation rights, which eventually led to severe depression and a suicide attempt. Throughout her life, she was criticized as unprincipled and promiscuous, even though the risks she took and the life she led paved the way for women in Iran and everywhere to expect more for themselves. Were I to write a movie about Forough Farrokhzad, it would be about the struggle between domestic dependence and artistic freedom. And it would be about the risks she took to step beyond what was acceptable for women at the time, even though it was very dangerous for her to do so. And of course, it would be about love. It would be about finding fulfillment in the arms of a lover that caused her to question everything about who she was and what she could expect for herself. And there she is. There is our first movie-worthy woman. Please keep your eyes peeled for the next movie-worthy woman. I'm super pumped about this one. And until then, let's all go write some sexy poetry.